Welcome, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Doreen Tannenbaum, the Strategic Initiatives and Communications Manager with Procurement Services. Thanks for joining us today to learn about data security and privacy reviews. It's going to be followed by a presentation from one of our Suppliers Showcase Platinum sponsors, Blue Space Interiors. We're going to end each session with a Q&A. The recording for today's session is going to be sent out via email and will be available on the Procurement Services website by next week. The slides are available now, and you can access them from the calendar invite that I sent you, and they're also available on the training page of our website. Next slide, please. So I'd like to announce that we have launched a new UCLC training course called Procurement Fundamentals, and it's mandatory for all department buyers. If you received an email from me last week or earlier this week, then you are required to complete that training by March 6th. Please make sure that your browser is up to date to reduce any technical issues you may run into. If you do run into any issues, please send me an email or open up a ServiceNow ticket. You can log into UCLC and search for Procurement Fundamentals in the search bar to register. We also have it at the top of our training page if you need any additional information. We also have training guides and videos available on our training section found at the top of the procurement website. We offer group and individualized training sessions as well. You can access that by opening up a ServiceNow ticket. Next slide, please. And for those of you who are not aware, we do host a bi-weekly office hours every Tuesday from 9 to 10 a.m. We invite you to join us for any questions you may have, watch us go through any live demos or website updates. You can send me an email to be included on the next calendar invite. Our next session, I believe, is next week. And typically we end the sessions early if we don't have any questions within the first 15 minutes. However, we're always available to answer any additional questions if you open up a ServiceNow ticket. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to turn it over to Snehal.
Thank you, Doreen. Good afternoon and Happy New Year to everybody. We are already in 2026. I think the 2025 went by pretty fast. I hope you all had wonderful holidays and enjoy your time off for the few days in December. Thank you for joining this training session. Before we get into the training of the specific topics, as I always do, I just wanted to once again remind everybody of the various compliance requirements that we have to follow. I also want to make sure that everybody appreciates that procurement services and purchasing is here to help the departments and the faculty and PI get what they want. They probably know what they want, but we help them in getting, so we do the how part of the procurement process so that it's the most effective and good overall total cost of acquisition for the faculty and staff that we are helping and supporting. Obviously, we have to do that in compliance with all the various policies, federal policies, state policies, UCOP policies. And then, as I had mentioned last time, if you were not there, we have just revised and released the UCI 707-10, which if you have not gone and looked at it on the policies website for UCI, I strongly encourage you to go and look at the 707-10 because we have highlighted all the various guidelines and requirements for the various types of special types of purchases. The other thing that I always try to emphasize is the fact that the president of UC has delegated authority for purchases and approvals to the chancellor, who has then redelegated that to procurement services. And so departments should not be signing any agreements or contracts with any suppliers, and that includes any order forms or any other kind of documents that we may be receiving from the suppliers to sign. Please work that through our office and the contracts team for you to make sure that you have the right person, the delegated person, signing the contracts and agreements. This applies to all the procurement contracts. Want to make sure that the design and construction contracts are signed by design and construction office. A lot of the research and sponsored research and other activities, contracts are signed by Office of Research. But when it comes to procurement of goods and services, please run it through our office. Uh, if you end up spending money from your own pocket, and if it ends up being not something that the university needed or is not approved, you may be liable for the purchase of that product or services. So please be mindful of that and make sure that you get the correct approvals in place before you actually make the purchase. Um, Besides the use of Pell card, if you're going to put anything on a requisition or a PO, it's important that you get the PO in place before you actually uh, purchase or procure the goods or services. That's the way to do it so that we don't have the after the fact submissions for purchases. Doreen, what's the next slide? Okay. So having said that, we'll dive into the data security and privacy review. We do have our partners from OIT and the privacy office who are actually going to be doing the presentation. The CISO's office, the information security office, is the one that actually manages and handles all the data security requests, and the privacy office handles all the privacy reviews. So they will be the one who will be speaking to these topics. We work very closely with them. If many of you don't know, we are tracking all the aging requests that are going either to the OIT team, the data security team for data security reviews, or any purchase orders that are pending. We do track them. We have been monitoring them. Anything that gets past 30 days, we have a log of those. And we actually speak in and discuss those in details with the various units that are processing those requests, like the data security office, the privacy office, the risk office, campus council, and procurement. We all, and actually accessibility team also joins us. And every Friday morning, we go through the aging requests and identify what the issues are and why it's aging and not getting processed. I would like to let you know that almost all, if not all, I would say 95% plus of the requests that we have that are aging invariably are related to IT services and purchases. And essentially, there is a data security and privacy element associated with these purchases, which is what ends up taking a long time. And what we are also experiencing is that the departments invariably don't know the details of the purchase and have to really spend time understanding what the purchase is. And more importantly, the suppliers are, many of those are non-responsive and don't provide the answers required by data security office and privacy office, which is what takes up most of the time. And the delays are happening because of the supplier's lack of responsiveness. And I would urge all of you to be mindful of that and support your departments to get the suppliers to respond to these requests. That is my ask from all of you from today. Besides what you're going to hear from the data security and privacy office, that's my ask, is that you please help move the suppliers along and push them to get the required information that they need so that we don't have aging POs that actually anything getting over 60 days, we are reporting it to the senior management. And we would rather keep those numbers low or at a minimal and not have a lot of suppliers that we are having issues with. So having said that, I'm going to now hand it over to our data security and privacy team, and I will let them introduce themselves.
All right, go
Next,
ahead. Okay. So,
yeah, next slide, please.
Yeah. Yeah, introduce yourself, Aniola. I
Okay, perfect, perfect. Okay, so Eniola Litero, part of the security team and the OIT, in charge of the reviews, the security reviews. I work closely with Carolyn. She's on the line as well, on the privacy team. Both security review and the privacy review go hand in hand, and both must be completed to have a full and complete report. So that's the security team. Should I go ahead with the slide, or Carolyn, are you going to introduce yourself first, or how does that go?
I can introduce myself after. That's okay with me.
Okay. Perfect, perfect. Okay, so I've been presented here our security review and requester process. The first link in there that points to basically that tells you where you can get information with regards to the security review. The link goes ahead to it shows you how to download the request form. So once you click on this link, for instance, you would get access into downloading the request form, and it tells you the email to provide that request form, which would be, so once it's routed via that email, it comes directly into the ServiceNow. It comes in as a ServiceNow ticket. You're the caller, and it comes as a ServiceNow ticket, which will be treated and handled by the team. So I'll go through this slide and then I can get a little less formal and take you through other things. So we would say, please monitor the updates from ServiceNow. So once your ticket comes in, we get it as a new request. After we get that request, we either, if it's a low risk request, for instance, we do due diligence on it. We treat it almost immediately, usually within, less than 24 hours, that's back and closed. If it's a higher request and needs, if it involves protection level data P3 or P4, which is our higher protection levels, and it would have to, go through the requester to the vendor, back to us for the report. And in that case, you would need to monitor your ServiceNow ticket. So you do have to, that is our number one cause of delay, which is just the requester being able to prompt the vendors to, complete their part of the process, which is the questionnaire, as well as, just answering other questions that we may have on the front end. Um, once the request is triaged, we rely on the requester to give us information so we know what questionnaire to send and ensure that we're asking the right questions of the vendor. So it's important to stay on top of the ticket and to ensure you monitor the ticket until it's closed. Again, moving on to number 4, where we have high risk, further review is required. Yeah, I think I spoke about that. We've got protection levels from P1 to P4. P1 is your typical low risk data. P2 is the same. P3, P4 is where we have high risk, more sensitive data, and they require a more detailed review, wherein we're gathering, we're gonna check and assess the vendor and their environment and ensure that we're either identifying risk or we're giving them a clean bill of health to say, okay, they're able to protect UC data. So that is with regards to OneTrust. If it is P3, P4, it goes into our OneTrust systems, auto notifications of our OneTrust. Everything is routed via OneTrust. So vendor gets to drop documentation, complete respond to our outstanding questions. Everything is done via OneTrust. And then we get the final report. And usually at that stage, that's when the kind of report is done. So communicating to your supplier. Okay. So that is, once they submitted it, sometimes they fall off the timeline. We give them 14 days. we give 14 days to conclude on the vendor side, which is more than enough time. These questionnaires are fairly standard, so most of them have seen this before. So we give 14 days for them to complete it. If we don't hear back from them within, I would say two days, 3 days after submitting and triggering the questionnaire to them, we start to remind you, the requester, through ServiceNow. We start to remind you to, pull on your vendors and ensure that they're completing the questionnaire, because we can see, are they at 50%, 70%? Have they completed it but not submitted it? Did they attach all the documents that were requested? So again, we would pull on you kind of to remind them to complete it. We can move on to informing your supplier that providing additional documentation is needed. The more we have, the better and easier the review process. For instance, within the questionnaire, we ask for security documents like the SOC report, HECVAT, which is, internal. We ask for ISO certifications. So if we have all of this, it makes the review easier because we can place reliance on a lot of these documents. Outside of the self-assessment, like, even the self-assessment, we can place reliance on that as well, but we place even more reliance on the security side with regards to the independent reviews that were done, the independent audits, which is the SOC 2 reports or the ISO certification. A lot of the controls that are on the questionnaire have already been mentioned in these audits. And so we can, place reliance on the opinion placed in there. We can check if it's a SOC, for instance, we can check that controls that are important to us for this engagement have been reviewed and there were no exceptions. So it makes the process quicker and easier on both sides. So sometimes they fill out the questionnaire, they forget to put the documentation, even though they have it. Sometimes they don't have it, and that's fine. We can we go ahead with our questionnaire, and based on their responses, we would give them, we would assess their risk based on that. But if they do have these documents, it's always better to attach them. Again, inform your suppliers about the Appendix DS. This goes into the contracts, and which are like minimum security requirements, I would call them, for to have business with UC. You have these minimum security requirements that they're expected to comply with or implement while the contract is on, it's obligatory. So sometimes suppliers will come back and have red lines. They say we do not align with certain sections, or we don't use this at the moment, or we're not able to give you incident notification within the stipulated time. And we're open to that. If they have red lines, we review the red lines and we kind of meet in the middle. We negotiate to see what works on both sides. And we push that forward to complete the contract phase. And then here it says monitor emails, ServiceNow for action, final approval. This is just kind of going through the whole process. So if it's a low risk review, P1, P2, it comes into ServiceNow, we treat it, we close it, and that's it. It's closed out from there. The approval goes to procurement, and then, you're able to commence with your purchase. But if it's a higher protection level, P3, P4, the request comes in, we do the assessment, we triage the initial triage form that comes with the ServiceNow ticket, and then we determine if it's P3 or the highest level risk, which is P4. P3 or P4 both into OneTrust, and then we kind of manage the whole process through OneTrust. We ask the requester to complete the intake. The intake is to gather more information. We want information from, the relevant person would be the requester, because they know the vendor, they know what they give the vendor, they know what the vendor has access to. So they complete all of that. And then their response will trigger the kind of questionnaire that goes out. So based on their response, it triggers automatically either P3 or P4. It triggers automatically the questionnaires. So will there be a privacy? Will there be GDPR? So it triggers that automatically. We get that to the vendor, we give them 14 days. Once they complete the questionnaire, if there are no additional questions, it comes back in, they click on submit, we're able to review that. We want to say within 48 hours, we should be able to, our SLA for that is about 48 hours once we have everything we need. So once that's done, yep, we go back into the ticket and we generally just close out the ticket. We get the privacy piece, very important. So the privacy piece, it works, they're simultaneously in OneTrust. So they're doing both of them. They both come back. We both close our reviews, security and privacy, and in some cases, GDPR also handled by privacy. Once we're done with that, that goes back into the ServiceNow ticket. We close it out. We give the approval message, risk identified, and other information about the engagement. Like, for instance, maybe their COI, the insurance coverage is not enough. We pass that to the relevant persons. Right now, we work with Mike McInnes. We pass that on. All that will be in the report, remembering that the report is our recommendation. And then we kind of give that approval or that recommendation saying, okay, we're good to go with them, or we identified this number of risk and maybe we want to give a not recommend. That also happens. So basically that's everything on this slide. If I have more time, can I dive into the um health side review questions that were sent to me?
Anila, let's move on to the next, and then in the Q&A,
Okay,
let's address that in that Q&A right after
okay,
Carolyn's presentation. Thank you.
perfect. All right, all right, thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Carolyn Cosentino-Ponoroff. I am the Assistant Campus Privacy Official on campus. I manage the vendor privacy reviews for our procurement. And I'm here to answer what I know is your burning question of the day. Why is my privacy review taking so long? Um, there are a lot of issues that can go into what can slow the privacy review process down, and there can be various different opportunities where we can work together and where you can help your department kind of streamline this process a little bit to try to make it simpler. The three biggest issues that I have found in doing these for a couple years that can slow this whole process down are the folks procuring the software really aren't sure what data they're sharing with the vendor. The vendor might take a super long time to respond. And then also the vendor might have high risk privacy uses, and that can slow it down while we try to mitigate that on the front end to still allow you to use a vendor that might be providing you a really good basic service. So I have this sheet that I hope is useful for folks. I'm not going to read every little thing on here. I do want you to kind of use this as a resource if you want to kind of do your own quick check on a vendor, or if you see a red flag and you want to ask me ahead of time. You can ask me usually through the ServiceNow ticket. I'll be in that ticket already, so you can just ask those questions automatically. But I do want to break it into different things that we can do in order to streamline the process that would help me help you finish this so we can just close out your thing and you can get your product. The first thing is really knowing what data we're using and what we're sharing. Because one thing that can slow down is there's a particular use and we're using social security numbers for some reason. I'm going to ask you, do we need to use these social security numbers? Can we do something else? So that might slow that process down, making sure that we're only sharing data or giving access to data to the vendors that they need in order to provide the service. Sometimes that does include social security numbers. It's fine. But I do want us to remember that vendors can collect all different kinds of data, including student data, employee data, patient data, donor data. And each of those have different laws that we have to follow in order to protect that data, and also just general expectations to the public. I do want to let everyone know about a couple of changes that are happening in the privacy review process that will hopefully streamline things in the future. Actually, that's just happened recently. If you see in the middle, I have Know Your Vendor. Has the vendor completed HECVAT 4? HECVAT is a higher education. Um, it's like a vendor assessment tool, comprehensive vendor assessment tool. And it's something that a consortium of higher education folks have developed. I don't know if how many of you are familiar with it. It's a spreadsheet. It has a whole bunch of questions. The vendor can go through if they provide services to higher education folks, and they can answer all these questions ahead of time. Recently, with this version 4, they've added in, there's like little tabs within the spreadsheet, they've added in a tab that has AI questions and privacy questions. So if they complete that and they have that done, they do not have to complete the privacy one trust questionnaire. They might have to complete the security one still, but they will not have to complete the privacy one. We can waive that requirement if they complete HECVAC 4 and upload it into the OneTrust questionnaire. In fact, it's the first question now. Have you completed the HECVAC 4? If yes, upload it here. And then they upload it and it takes them to the end and they're done. They don't have to do anything else unless we have follow-up questions. So if you do happen to be talking with your vendor and they talk about how they've done the HECVAT 4, that might help move the process forward if they know that they can just upload that and be done with it. I am hoping that some of our vendors, especially ones that routinely serve higher education institutions, will utilize the HECVAT 4 because for me, it's also just a good indication that they're already thinking about, providing services to higher education institutions. Um, Folks that if we are using AI, that can also slow the process down. It doesn't mean no, it just means we have to ask different questions. If they have completed the HECVAT 4, they have already answered several questions about AI use, which will be helpful. I am going to be adding in some AI questions into our regular questionnaire. My goal is to have those live before the end of the fiscal year, hopefully by the end of this current quarter. In order to streamline that process a little bit, it'll just be a couple questions. There's really not that many things that are separate from AI that would be separate from any other type of data use that we have. We used to think it was going to be really different, but it's kind of turning out to be about the same kind of risks. Um, so that is something to keep in mind if you are using AI, that can take a little bit longer as we get a handle on exactly what they're doing with the data, making sure that their third party that they're using to provide the AI sources, that they have a solid contract with them and they're not going to be using our data to train, other sources, to train the AI model. Um, the last thing that I want to mention. Eniola has been talking about, how there's like three questionnaires right now. There's the security questionnaire, the privacy questionnaire, and the GDPR questionnaire. I'm going to be phasing out the GDPR questionnaire again by the end of this fiscal year, hopefully by the end of this quarter. So to just have a couple GDPR specific questions, if applicable, within our regular privacy questionnaire to try to help minimize the number of questionnaires that people have to answer and also try to streamline the process and have everything in one spot, since it's all kind of the same questions and risks anyway. Um, Try to simplify that for everybody. So I wanted to let you know that that's in the works, and that is something that we're trying to do to just help make this process faster and easier for you as the buyer and also our vendors who are completing these surveys, these questionnaires. Um, One thing that I do think is that always slows things up. I read their privacy policy and they talk about how they're going to be selling our data to third-party advertisers or sharing them, or how they have advertising cookies that have third-party advertisers use them, or how they pull data from other sources online and they use it to create profiles about our students or employees, so on and so forth. That always requires me to go back and ask questions to the vendor in order to clarify. Um, and so that is something that can slow it down just by their own explaining how they use the data. Sometimes that really doesn't align with our requirements and our privacy principles at UC. So that can always slow it down. But I do want to let you know that the thing that slows everything down, at least on from the privacy review side, is that the vendor just doesn't fill out the survey. And then when we inevitably have follow-up questions, they just don't respond to any of the questions, or the response is so cryptic that it still doesn't give me a good hold on how they're using our data. Because that's all I'm trying to do at the end of the day, figure out how they're using our data, who are they giving it to, how long are they keeping it, will they get rid of it when they're not using it anymore? Those kinds of really basic privacy questions. That's all I'm trying to figure out. Um, so at the end of the day, the really big red flags that are going to hold all this up and maybe result in a do not recommend is if they are selling, using, or sharing our data for commercial purposes, if they are sharing personally identifiable data with Google Analytics or other tracking technologies, not the standard. I want to see how many people have clicked over here on the page. Like that, that's not what I'm worried about. That's not a privacy concern. Um, a red flag could be they're just not responding to anything. And a red flag to where I will definitely say do not recommend is if they are using UC data to train AI models specifically. Not just that we're using AI, it's training the data that I'm concerned about. Um, so that is the super high level. I hope that gives you some information in where we're going with the privacy reviews, especially for those of you who have been doing this for a while, to try to streamline and simplify it a little bit. And then also a little bit of insight into um, what can hold the process up. Um, and then also know that anytime you have any questions about privacy related to a vendor, you should always contact privacy@uci.edu. We are more than happy to contact you and answer your burning privacy questions. That's all I have, and I'm happy to answer questions right now.
Thanks, Carolyn. If we have any questions, I would ask you to kindly put it in the chat there. We do have another presentation that needs to start in a minute, so I'd like to get through any of the burning questions you may have for Eniola or Carolyn.
Yeah, Aniela, go ahead and talk about the health reviews that you had brought about earlier.
Okay, perfect. I'll summarize that real quickly. So sometimes for some of these reviews, if they're a health review that is it's either, it involves medical health records, PHI, PHI, healthcare providers are involved, or insurers, clearinghouses. In those cases, that review, it has HIPAA data that goes to our health side, not the campus side. The campus side is more FERPA data, where we speak to educational records, school receiving, federal funds and those kind of information. So when that does happen, there's it can be hard to identify sometimes that we have found, but we do support with that. If you're not clear on where that falls, um, submit the regular request ticket, give us as much information as possible, and then we can, kind of verify. We work with the health side team, we work with Uma on the health side, and they handle the health reviews. If it comes in and it's needed, a health review is needed, we also support by submitting the request through the health system. They've got their own systems, you would need a health side net ID to access it. So if that's not available, we do have access to that, and we would just ask those questions in the ServiceNow ticket, and then we would route that through the health side systems, and we would continue to support that all the way till the ticket is closed. So the health side requests, if they come in, we're available to support with that. Another thing I forgot to mention was that when we do these reviews, they're valid for 2-year periods. So you wouldn't need another one for another 2 years, even if it wasn't done by your department, as long as we can leverage the information, meaning the scope is the same, it's pretty much the same in terms of scope, then we're able to leverage that report for 2 years. Okay. That'll be it. I just wanted to mention that health review side.
Thank you, Aniela. Yeah, so it's
Mhm.
very important for the departments to actually know more about the purchase that the department is making to be able to support them. That is very important for you to understand. The other thing that is very important is that many times we find that the emails that we are providing the information or sending the questionnaires to the supplier is not valid, or the person that we are sending it to is not the right person. So we kindly ask that you actually find out who at the supplier end is the right person to be responding to all these questionnaires. Because the sales guy probably doesn't understand and know much about what their systems are capable of doing. So it's important that you also help us identify the right people who should be receiving this questionnaire so that they can provide the right responses faster and quicker. Unfortunate thing is that this request go out to the suppliers like for 3-4 weeks before we find out that it's actually not going to the right person, and that is how the delays are happening, and we are continuing to have to monitor this aging request. So please help us identify the right people who should be receiving this request so that we can expedite the whole process and not have to have you wait, or the department or the requester wait for several weeks before they get what they're working for. Okay, so that's another thing I wanted to kind of mention and highlight to you guys. Thank you, Caroline and Eniola, both for partnering with us and sharing the requirements for data security and privacy with the departments. We appreciate it very much. You guys are wonderful partners for us, and we love working with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. If there are any additional questions, we would be happy for you to send it to us. Or you can, as Caroline mentioned in her chat, you can send it directly to privacy@uci.edu.